let's start with not what our kids are being brainwashed by, but are you trying to brainwash my kids?
100%. And I
okay. I appreciate
next question. I shied away from this question in the early years because we were accused. Current Affairs, by the way, is a magazine written by socialists for socialists. So they're a very collectivist mentality. They hate libertarian type people, and it's funny. Their workers, their writers tried to unionize, and then they all got fired. There's been some fascinating internal turmoil about them, but that's besides the point.
Free country, they're entitled to believe in whatever nonsense they want.
Exactly. So setting that issue aside, so here's this argument from Current Affairs and many others in the early years that Tuttle Twins, you're trying to propagandize kids. Let kids be kids. This is stuff for adults, this political stuff. Wait until they're older.
There's a fair criticism in that.
I thought it was a fair criticism, and we got it frequently in the early years when this was a new thing. We were trying to establish basically a new category. Like when you watch Shark Tank, which I do religiously, when there's a person pitching a product that is for a brand new category where they have to educate the consumer about why they even need that, all the sharks, especially Cuban, they're always like, no, this is going to cost way too much because you've got to do the work of actually telling your consumer why they need your product. And that's where we were in the early years. No one really agreed with us in the early days about teaching kids these ideas. Even people who are like-minded. We got criticism from our own tribe of this is kind of weird, why not wait till they're a little bit older? And
well, now we've got what are some of the hits on the let's say other side?
Oh, A is for activism.
Yeah, anti-racist baby.
Right.
What was the one that's caused a lot of brouhaha? Something queer something. I'm forgetting the name of the book. It's gotten banned in a lot of school libraries.
Gender baby and all these different things.
Yeah, so it's everybody's playing the Tuttle Twins game now. Were you early, or was there always a bunch of sort of politically minded stuff, but it was mostly left of center?
We were early for those on what I'll call, but I agree with you that I hate the term, the right, right?
Yeah.
For conservatives, libertarian, the individualist approach, we were early, because now you've got Brave Books and PragerU and some of these others that have started doing it as well. But at the time, the left was already, so-called left, was already doing a lot of the stuff.
I mean, Captain Planet on television years before.
Oh, yeah, right. A lot of propaganda, and you get the magazines and the cartoons, and a lot of them have more recently gone woke, but at the time, we were kind of early. And so I think that's why we got a lot of criticism from people saying, this is a new thing, do we even need to do this, and why do we need to do it? What I've come to believe since that time, I don't shy away from propaganda or indoctrination or words like this anymore, because I try and use it as an education moment. I am propagandizing children. What do I mean by that? I am propagating ideas. If you look at just the root word of what propaganda is, we use it in the pejorative sense of the Nazis that are trying to manipulate your mind.
Or the CIA.
We'll get there with the true conspiracies.
There's all kinds of fun to be had in this conversation.
The challenge is that it's all about ideas. It's a war of ideas. And so who are you, or who is a teacher, or who is a school board to tell me that they and their ideas should be what persuades my children, and their worldview is what my child should be exposed to, when I, as a parent, as a father, have the natural right to kind of educate my children? And the weird thing here for us, especially in kind of I'll say kind of the Christian conservative movement, which comprises a large chunk of our audience, all these parents would take their kids to Sunday school or read the Bible for kids, the little illustrated Bible or whatever.
Yeah.
No one questioned teaching their kids, transmitting to their kids their religious beliefs and values and ideas. Everyone would, of course you have that right. No one would even question that. And yet these very same parents were failing to do it when it comes to their political and economic and civic values. And there was this big disconnect. And it boggled my mind in the early days. Why is it that you feel okay doing so religiously, but you feel icky about doing it? All you're really doing is you're surrendering to other people who don't share your worldview and values the intellectual development of your children during their most formative years. Why aren't you in the mix transmitting your ideas to the extent that you believe in certain truths or feel very confident in certain things? I think ultimately the answer is that most parents feel very superficial in their own understanding of these very ideas, because often they were products of that public school system. Their understanding is very superficial, so they felt insecure about ever transmitting those ideas to their kids. They would believe generically in freedom or the Constitution or free markets or name your topic, but they had no idea how to talk to their kids about it. They didn't even know how to talk to a peer, an adult peer, or a Facebook comment or whatever. And so that insecurity, that intellectual insecurity, is ultimately what we're solving for here with the Tuttle Twins books, to say you don't need to know any prerequisites. You don't need to have studied any of this yourself. Just sit down and read a bedtime story, and you're both going to learn together.
You know, I was thinking about this this morning, because you bring up that, look, we raise our kids in, if you are religious at all, you raise your kids, even if only mildly, in your religious tradition. Maybe you go to church. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't. Maybe that's all you do. Maybe you only do it occasionally. But I'm like what we call a cradle Catholic. So I went to 12 years of Catholic school. I'm Italian Catholic, and we talk about it from time to time on the show. And I've been grappling with this in the faith domain personally, because I've gotten more interested in my faith as an active matter, not just as a received kind of, this is the thing I am, and I didn't reject it, so I guess I kept it. And when we moved to Austin, because of stuff I was already sort of seeing happen in Mateo's Catholic school in New Jersey, we didn't put him in Catholic school when we moved down. Mm. And so he got baptized, but he didn't get any of the other sacraments. You know, Catholicism's got a lot of sacrament and ritual, and and even I kind of don't remember why all these things are the way they are. So I've raised a son who's sort of a chip off the old block and sort of being very philosophically engaged, and we sent him to Acton Academy, which is radically Socratic. And so he's now 18, and he hasn't really been that brainwashed in the faith that I do kind of want him to have. Mm-hmm. But now he's 18. So we're doing this, it's called an adult rite. So I'm actually going with him on Sundays and going through the process of him becoming confirmed as if he's an adult, because he is technically an adult.
Yeah.
And he's going along. I don't know that he necessarily would be doing this. In fact, I know that he wouldn't be doing this were it not for me. I feel an obligation to do this with him. Mm-hmm. And I've told him, look, I think you should do this. Come along, let's see. I'm not going to force you, but I'm using a little bit of parental coercion here.
Sure.
And that has made me think a lot about this. There is a legit discomfort if you're a thinking person about, if I want my kid ultimately to be an intellectually curious person that holds their beliefs on their own 2 feet, this formative time when they're young is a little weird.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to set some defaults. And sometimes they even backfire, the best of intentions. We have a rebellious kid, and whatever we're going to tell them, they're going to do the opposite.
Right.
Where have you've come to a place where you're no, this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
Where do you self-reflect and say, there is a weirdness to this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that question. So I see a lot of what we're doing as laying a foundation, and people are going to build all kinds of things on that foundation. But if we don't lay the foundation, they're not going to be able to build as securely or as successfully as they otherwise might. I'm a big believer. In fact, in the Mormon faith specifically, one of the big doctrines that gets emphasized is agency, the importance of moral agency, that God has given us the ability, the right to act independently, to act rather than to be acted upon, and that we are supposed to try and identify the truth, act upon it, share it with others. But that we are the moral actors here. We are the agents of change, and we're supposed to stand up and do something. And so I think about that too, as in the context your question, as a dad for my kids, they too are agents. I need to raise them and educate them in a way that empowers them insofar as is possible when they're 6 or 10 or 15 or 18. Yeah. In ways that they can act, but they don't know. They're learning. They're humans in embryo. So it's a tension. It's a balance. I don't have any perfect answers, but I see my role as a dad, and as what we're doing with the Tuttle Twins, is just saying, here are some foundational truths that I believe in. If anything sounds weird to you, if you disagree, let's have a conversation about it. I'd love to talk about it. But I feel an obligation that if I do indeed understand these things to be true, these religious truths, these economic truths, whatever, I feel a duty, not just with my own kids, but the world, to say, I believe these are true ideas. Now, if you disagree with that, fine, let's have a discussion, and let's maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're wrong, maybe we come together. But if I am so confident in believing in a certain idea, I feel the need to evangelize that idea. I don't want to just keep it in myself. So with my kids, as they get older, that gets a little bit easier. You can have more meaningful discussions about these things. Yeah. But in the early years, it's the simplified stories and the little nuggets of ideas, just to plant some seeds, just to build that base layer of a foundation. But where I try and think is like as soon as possible, as my kids, they're now 14 and 12, trying to have these more meaningful discussions to say, like Socratically, you mentioned the act and accounting. What do you think? What's the issue here? What's the problem? How do we do this? And try and pull out of them the ideas that they might have within them. The biggest crime, I think, of the modern school system is that it's forcing millions of kids to adapt to a single template, right? We're making our unique children, each on their own God-given paths of life and different talents and everything, all conform to this set standard, rather than adapting curriculum and processes and stuff to the individual child. I think my duty as a father is to help my kids figure out who they are, not conform them to become a mini-me or conform to a template that some school board set. I want to help them figure out who they are. I feel like my own path, I didn't realize until after college that this was the path for me. I was going down a totally different path ideologically and professionally. And so I often reflect and wonder, if I had found my path earlier, even 2 years, but what about like a full decade? What more impact might I have had today? How much further down my own path could I have been if I had found that journey? So for me with my kids, it's trying to say, here's some ideas I believe in. Here's this foundation that I want you to have, but let's start those discussions as early as possible. I mean, maybe your son's path is different than you envision. Maybe my own kid's path is different. I feel like my role is to help them figure that out and start to flex those agency muscles as early as possible so they can realize, hey, I am kind of the captain of this ship. What direction do I want to go? How fast do I want to go? Rather than me telling them what they should do.
If you like this clip, we've got more where that came from. Be sure to watch the full video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.